Thanks, Jan. Okay, so now we'd really like to take contributions, but particularly from people who've already been involved in the scoping process. So are there any volunteers left? Oh yeah, here we go. So thank you. So Harold, do you want to kick off? Thanks. And from the mic's on the way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I firstly endorse what Jan said. I think this really being interdisciplinary across the three working groups, but really across and having a lot of inputs, as also I think at this conference. There are two things I would highlight. I think that I think are really important in that. In the scoping report, that we really do explore the full space. There was a lot of discussion of whether just to compare 1.5 to 2 degrees, and I think, again, from this meeting as well, I think it's very clear. There's some language Jan will remember on higher levels as relevant. I think they are very relevant. I think we need to understand both the problem of where we're coming from and where we're going. And the second is that I think it's really, that interdisciplinary effort really needs to integrate the considerations also of sustainable development as it relates to both adaptation and mitigation. And I think that is in the outline. I think it's through every chapter and then picked up. I think it's the last chapter concluding overall. And I think having that theme would really give us a better understanding of what development pathways we need to follow. And in fact, just from this last session I came from, what the socio-technical economic transitions, what a transition actually means. And I think we need to get that done from many different perspectives altogether. And I think it'll be fantastic.
Anybody else want to put in something now, what they feel coming out of this past 2 days, or maybe they brought it with them, points they would really want this 2018 report to address or fear that it might not address? Bearing in mind, think in terms of summary for policymaker bullet points, i.e. short.
Consumer empowerment, engaging the consumers to affect the demand side. I've been working on a solution for 10 years. We had our 3-year research project and proved the concept. There's something real that can be done to inform individuals whether they're living sustainably or not on a day-by-day basis. We just need some more time to implement the software. So there is something viable to propose to specifically engage that issue, which it seems a lot of people want, but nobody's got their finger on the solution. My EcoCost does.
I must say, a lot of the really interesting conversations in the past couple of days have, to me, been on the sort of consumer versus producer dichotomy, which should they be so separate, is one question which occurred to me. I'd already recognized somebody down here. Can we have in the front room?
Yes, thanks. This has been a really interesting conference. I would like to suggest, though, that this report and this community not only focus on models and kind of imaginations of what these different technologies and the different pathways could do, but look actually at the real world research that you can actually see, well, how have some of the transitions happened? What have been the actual barriers? I feel a little sorry. I've been in this field for 20 years and a little bit of deja vu here with some of the presentations on ecosystems can take up carbon, or, there's these technologies and wouldn't they be great? We really seriously need, if the urgency is 2030, which is what I heard, we need more information on what actually works in the real world to change trajectories or to change the implementation of different kinds of technologies, behaviors, whatever. We need real data on that, and I think it's out there. So,
thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Elise.
I think one of the most important things that parties would look for in the report is what does 1.5 mean for different regions? Which are the real hotspots that will be most vulnerable to 1.5 degree? If they could be distinguished from what are 2 degrees and others, I think that will be very useful. And secondly, in the land use sectors, we had many presentations. To what extent land use sectors can contribute to 1.5 degree? I think here we should really look towards opportunities for synergy between mitigation and adaptation in agriculture, in forests and wetlands and grasslands. there are opportunities for both mitigation and adaptation. I think that should really be explored. Thank you.
The lady right at the back. Apologies to people who happen to be in line with the person I'm pointing to. You know.
Thank you. I would say 2 points. The first is please focus on the human impact of the difference between 1.5 and 2. That is the suffering if you allowed it to go up. That was what helped in Paris when Saudi Arabia tried to block the recommendations of the IPCC report, even with that minimal information of the human impact between 5.5. The second point is, please help us to engage in the human behavior. It's something I wish we could have more confidence in these discussions, because these are the root causes. Have confidence in change. Thank you.
We take one over here.
Thank you. 3 points.
No, please.
Yeah.
So, no.
Okay.
1 point.
I think at the scoping meeting, all disciplines were represented, and I think that's very useful for the report. I think this report will be important for the implementation of the Paris Agreement, which means that it should be readable, it should be easy to understand, more easy than some of the presentations here, by the way. And then I feel that it's important that it gives the politicians, you know, the tools and the answers, how they can really implement the goals in the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
I'm trying to spot hands that haven't been, at the back row, I'm trying to spot people who I haven't heard contributing so much during this meeting. So,
Hi, just 1 point about the trade-offs of reaching a 1.5 degree goal. That it's come up briefly, but that not all the outcomes necessarily of reaching 1.5 might be positive. One being, for example, a massive expansion in the amount of biofuels and what that means in terms of food production, but also the amount of nitrogen fertilizer that gets applied and what that means. So just understanding better the trade-offs also.
absolutely. A massive issue for this report will be how it deals with that fundamental cost-benefit question. Ben, I don't think yeah. Sorry, Keith, sorry.
Well, it won't surprise you to hear that I wonder how much solar geoengineering will get considered. And I really want to just point out 2 things. One, that it's the only way we could be absolutely confident of staying under some temperature goal. And 2, there are now literally hundreds of papers which suggest that moderate use could reduce risks, and that would happen on a regional basis. There may be reasons why it doesn't work. There are horrific governance problems. There may be unexpected, hideous things that will happen. But I think people need to have a serious assessment of what the literature says, independent from what our fears are about whether it's okay to talk about it.
And I can't resist, since I'm up here, supplementing that with, of course, as we both well know, it's the only way of guaranteeing a permanently changing climate if one relies on solar radiation management to balance continued emissions of cumulative greenhouse gases. The climate will keep changing. So in context, so sorry, I was, yeah. Forgive me, I was abusing my position as chair there, but we can carry on with that one. I absolutely agree with you, and it will have to be addressed. It was in fact discussed at the scoping meeting. There's no sort of specific chapter on geoengineering, but rest assured that topic cannot be ignored if we're going to do an adequate assessment of the literature on this. Plenty of topics get covered in IPCC reports without a dedicated chapter. Brenda? And we're going to have to take one more from ideally one of the younger scientists present, maybe right at the back. I can't see how young or old you are actually at this distance, but I was just going from, and Brenda, of course, one of our younger scientists present, but.
I'm not sure I call myself a scientist, but never mind.
Brenda.
There have been several comments about putting in human behaviour. What I would like to do is have a scenario which starts with demand reduction. There is a statement that was made in the town hall, and Nick's picked it up in his comment, that 50% of the mitigation is coming from demand reduction. I haven't seen a single scenario, or understood that I've seen a single scenario, that actually says that. So it would be really useful if you could start with demand reduction, start with energy efficiency. It's a major part of Paris, it's a major contribution, and then see what we're left with to have to deal with.
I think it's undoubtedly true that one of the big challenges of this report is going to be the lack of the sort of transformative scenarios. We're still very much working from existing scenarios, despite the valiant work of people like Yuri and so on to try and come up with a broader range. Right at the back, yes. And this is the last word before we hand over to Akim.
So I think from a policymaker perspective, it's going to be really important to collapse mid-century outcomes to the next decade. What do we need to happen in the next decade? What are the kind of path dependencies for choices we make? For example, natural gas. If we choose to go down that path, that has some real repercussions for our ability to cut emissions down, further down. Policymakers are great at postponing decisions, so this report should take those mid-century outcomes and tell us what we need to know today. We need to invest in transition assistance for coal miners. We need to help vulnerable countries with impacts that are already unfolding, the loss and damage piece. So all of that, what do we need to do in the next 5 to 10 years, not what do we need to do in 2040 and 2050?
That's a good point to end this on, but to emphasize for those whose hands I wasn't able to recognize, please feed your thoughts in on the Twitter feed, or in the sort of the various multimedia channels that we've set up around this conference to get people's thoughts in, or you can always just resort to old-fashioned email. We are trying to put together, the rapporteurs are trying to put together as much as possible in terms of outputs of this conference, because we do want, obviously the outputs of this conference alone are not sufficient, they're not IPCC compliant and so on, but they hopefully will provide ideas for people to actually get their papers submitted and published on time for the 2018 assessment. So that's the real work that we all have to get back to our offices and get on with.